Hello, I'm Dr. Jo Cravatta, and today we're going to talk about Kapha dosha. Kapha dosha. Everything in Ayurveda is made up of the five elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Kapha dosha is made up of water and earth. Water, fluidity; earth, structure and solidity. So Kapha dosha inside of us manifests with that combination of water and earth to make our bodies. So our bodies, the body that we have is made up of Kapha, because Kapha is the substance, it's the structure. Now, when we look at certain people, some people have different sizes of bodies. They may have small, medium, large bodies. The bigger the body, the more kapha someone has in their body type, their Ayurvedic body type. And why does that really matter? It really is important for us to understand what is our body type, because that helps us to determine the foods that are really good for us, the foods that we need to stay away from, and different behaviors in our life and different lifestyle choices that we make. A person with a kapha body type is going to have bigger bones. They're going to have a tendency for more water and earth inside of them. So, for example, they may have a greater tendency to gain weight. Now, this does not mean that everyone who gains weight is kapha in their body type. In fact, you could be a pitta vata. You could be a vata pitta, and you could have gained a bit of weight. In fact, obesity is quite prevalent in the West, or probably actually throughout the world. And it doesn't mean that everyone has a kapha body type. A very interesting fact is that, again, if we think of those five elements, vata dosha is made up of ether and air. And kapha dosha is made up of water and earth. They're the exact opposite. Vata is light, it's ether and air. Kapha is heavy. Vata is dry. Kapha is moist. Vata is highly irregular and unstable, and kapha is regular and stable. So what happens many times when someone has a vata imbalance, perhaps they're not keeping a good regular routine. Perhaps they're not eating at regular times, or perhaps they're not getting exercise, or they're doing lots of caffeine, flying on airplanes a lot, multitasking. Again, it doesn't matter what body type you are, vata, pitta, or kapha, or combinations, that when you have a vata imbalance, active, busy mind, some anxiety and worry, not sleeping well, what happens is the body and mind try to bring that kapha in order to bring balance. And this inherent wisdom inside of the body. And so it's very careful. You have to be very careful when you're trying to decide what your Ayurvedic body type is. If you have any excess weight on you, it's important that you try to figure out why you may have that excess weight. Could even be your thyroid. So it just doesn't naturally mean that you've been aggravating your kapha. And how would one aggravate their kapha? Well, kapha season is wintertime. And many people may notice that they have a tendency to gain weight in the wintertime. Why is that? Because there's more kapha in the environment. There's more moisture in the environment. And Kapha is also cold. And so when we're in that cold, moist environment, we tend to exercise less. We're going outside less. People are kind of hibernating, kind of like bears. And what happens is that your metabolism will slow down. The metabolism is governed by the thyroid and by pitta. And that when you're sluggish, when you're slow, when you have more lethargy, and again, it doesn't matter what your body type is, anybody could have this, that kapha will increase inside of you. Now, if you put on top of that you also have a vata imbalance, and the body's trying to create more balance within your body to create homeostasis, the body doesn't want any imbalances. What happens is now might find yourself, you wake up one day and you notice that, oh my goodness, you're having these different kapha symptoms. It's not just weight gain. It could be excess mucus. It could be blood parameters, such as increased cholesterol. It could be any of the blood lipid levels that are increased. You could be finding that you're having more lung ailments. Perhaps in the wintertime, you're having more chest, like a chest cold or bronchitis, but that always involves kapha as well. Lungs, there's that liquidy layer in the lungs that helps to have that exchange of oxygen into the body. That if you increase that and have that be more mucousy, well, then you're going to have a greater tendency to have more chest ailments. So there's a wide variety of ways that excess kapha will show up in the body and mind. As I mentioned, lethargy and just difficult to get going with things. Tendency to maybe sit and rest a little bit too much and not really getting up and being active, right? So all those would be more mentally emotional aspects of increased kapha. So it's a little normal in the winter time because it's cold outside, but it doesn't mean that we still have to be too lethargic in the wintertime. So those are different ailments could happen with kapha. How can we bring balance to kapha? If you notice you have a kapha imbalance, if you notice any of those things that I just mentioned, and particularly high cholesterol, and it's very common, very, very common that people have high cholesterol. And even glucose levels, right? It's a little more complicated to talk about glucose levels, but even glucose levels are going to have that sweetness, that's the sweet taste, glucose, sweet, and so carbohydrate. And so when any of those ailments are occurring inside of someone, how do we create balance? So we look at those 6 tastes in Ayurveda. It's very important that we eat not only to honor our body type, but also to honor our imbalance. So when you decide how to eat with Ayurveda, it's very important. First of all, you know your body type, because you never want to aggravate your body type with your food. And then you want to eat for your imbalance. So, for example, the 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salt, pungent, bitter, and astringent. 3 tastes balance vata, sweet, sour, salt. The next 3 tastes, pungent, bitter, and astringent, balance Kapha, and then pitta, right, that middle dosha, is balanced by sweet, bitter, and astringent. So, having pungent, bitter, and astringent tastes are very important in the wintertime and also in springtime. Springtime, what happens a lot of times as the weather is beginning to warm up, it's almost as if the kapha inside of us starts to melt and wants to move out. So many times allergies will have, obviously it has excess fluid, excess mucus, runny nose, right? It's going to be related to pitta and vata as well, but that if you are aggravating your kapha throughout the wintertime, eating ice cream, right? Sweet taste aggravates vata, balances vata, but sweet taste aggravates kapha dosha. So if you're in kapha season and you're eating lots of sweet taste, so cookies, candy, sweets, lots of carbohydrates, oily foods, you could be aggravating your kapha. Now, if we make those things cold, so let's say like ice cream, now you have the sweet taste and the cold, and now you're really aggravating kapha dosha. So anybody's kapha could get aggravated if in the wintertime when it's colder, or spring where it can still be cold and there's more mucousy stuff happening in the spring, that if you're eating too much sweet taste, you could be increasing your kapha. You could be gaining weight. You could be affecting your cholesterol levels. You could be bringing more lethargy into your life. So we have to watch that. Now, in the summertime, later spring, summer, autumn, having that sweet taste will not be as aggravating to kapha and to all those different kapha ailments. So we want to avoid sweet and have less sour and salt, because remember, sweet, sour, salt balances vata and increases kapha. And so in the wintertime and spring, and anytime you have a big kapha imbalance, you want to be limiting, not having a lot of sweet, sour, and salty taste. You still have some. We need all six tastes, particularly at lunch and dinner. We need all six tastes, but you don't want to overdo it. Sitting down and watching television in the evening after dinner and having a piece of cake or having ice cream is surely going to increase your kapha. Having too much sour, eating too much sour food, such as yogurt in the wintertime, will increase your kapha. So you have to watch that. The tastes that balance, again, kapha is balanced by pungent, bitter, and astringent. What is pungent? Hot, spicy. What is bitter? Greens, mostly green vegetables. Astringent. It's going to be beans, apples, pears, and poultry. Not all poultry. Some of the darker poultry meat has a lot more sweet inside of it. So what do? You want to make sure that maybe you're having grated ginger in a little water before eating. Maybe you make sure that you're having, cooking with leeks, or if you like, and if your spiritual path allows it, you might have onions and garlic. They're also pungent. You might have mustard. Mustard is a wonderful, fun way of getting pungent taste. You could use prepared mustard and make a little sauce to put on top of your food, right? So you give yourself that pungency. Um, Bitter, you need to make sure that definitely at lunch and probably at dinner that you have bitter taste. And what is bitter again? It's going to be those green vegetables. Now, the really bitter things happen to be um, things like the greens, kale, collard greens, endive, arugula, those really green vegetables that when particularly the cruciferous bitters greens, when those are cooked well, then they're not going to aggravate your vata. And then you put a little bit of oil, a little bit of lemon, a little bit of salt on them, maybe a little bit of black pepper. Makes them very easily digestible if you eat them out that way. Not to be eating lots of raw, particularly if you have a vata imbalance. So you don't want to have a lot of salad, you can have some salad. If you have a vata imbalance, and you can go back to the video that I made on pacifying vata, that if you have a vata imbalance, means you have a tendency to have a bit of gas. If your bowel movement's a little slow, if you have a tendency to have drier, harder bowel movements, that making sure that you're not having a lot of raw vegetables is very important. So how do we balance that? You cook your green vegetables. You cook your kale and your collard greens and your Brussels sprouts and broccoli. You cook them really well. And then you put those other things on it that I mentioned before. You can have a little bit of something like arugula or some of the leafy vegetables like red leaf lettuce and romaine lettuce like that. But those things are much more for when the weather is warmer. Turmeric is bitter and astringent. So making sure that you're having turmeric, at least, I have turmeric probably almost every day in the food that I eat, but some people may not want that all the time. But that having it somewhat regularly is really balancing to not only kapha, but also to pitta, because it's bitter and astringent taste. Kapha is also aggravated if you sleep too late in the morning. Ideally, we'd wake up around sunrise. Why? Because kapha time of day begins around sunrise and it goes for 4 hours. And if you wake up too much into kapha time, you wake up at, well, depends on where you live and how much sun you have, but 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. If you wake up too late, you wake up deep into that kapha time of morning and you're going to feel a little more groggy. It will be more difficult to wake up and be energetic. I often wonder how many people really need that cup of coffee in the morning, which is a stimulant, because perhaps they have an aggravated kapha or they woke up too late. Just something to think about. I hope you've enjoyed my talk on kapha dosha today. Have an absolutely totally lovely day.